Hi there, Novabug here. Right, this is going to be, hopefully, the first in a series of videos I hope to make. Hopefully, lots of hoping there. Much like Amstrad did. Kind of ironic and a bit fitting for this subject. On looking back at the magazine that I read a lot in my early days of gaming. As you know, this is primarily an Amstrad channel, apart from a lot of other stuff. 60% Amstrad. But the first issue of Amstrad Action I want to look at, and this is what we're going to do in this video series, is look at an issue of Amstrad Action and have a look at some of the major articles in it and see what panned out, what happened, what was read at the time, what was suggested at the time, and what really did happen. So I thought it would be quite fitting to start with issue 60 of Amstrad Action, which is this. And as you can see, simply stunning. This is the issue that introduced the GX4000 and the Plus range to the world. And some of the articles in here, some of the things written are very interesting, and they're very fitting to what I think of the console and the reasons behind its failure, blah 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 blah. And it's quite funny to read some of the specialist points of view. It's actually very interesting to read Alan Sugar's point of view and some of his staff as well. What they thought they were going to have, where the GX4000 was going to do. There's a review of Burning Rubber in here. It's a lovely picture, that. I do like that picture of the GX, but I've got some bits and pieces here I've bookmarked just to discuss. The first article is a feature on the GX itself. The consoles are coming, with a nice sort of War of the Worlds-esque artwork there. If you've seen the inside cover of the musical version LP of War of the Worlds, it's very similar to that. Heat rays being shot on the public. Amstrad shooting the public. Buy our console! I will kill you! Don't think that was the kind of thing they were coming on. But this is a brief description of what the GX is about. I'll read you a few paragraphs and see what you think. The opening paragraph. Computer games represent one of the fastest growing areas in the world of leisure. Amstrad, pioneer of the affordable home computer, is staking its claim with a fantastic new games console, the GX4000. Fair enough. Sounds good on the opening, doesn't it? So they talk about the slightly improvements. They focus on the price of it being under £100, £99. They do focus on that, and I will come back to that in a minute. Sorry. The styling. They talk about the styling. I mean, let's admit, no matter what you think of the GX4000, maybe you think it's shit or whatever, you've got to admit it does look great. It's a very nice looking console. There are a lot of good looking consoles that have come out that haven't done very well, and at least it does look nice. So it does say that in here. But what makes me laugh about this article is the last paragraph. And you can't just help but grin and laugh in retrospect by knowing what happened. One thing is for certain, it says this in words, one thing is for certain, the GX4000 will revolutionise the way games are played. Amstrad is set to storm the console market in the 90s in the same way it stormed the home computer market with the CPC in the 80s. The console market has a very powerful new contender indeed. No. Sorry, Amstrad, you could have. Other articles in this, funnily enough, kind of strip that paragraph, that sentence away piece by piece, which is a pity. They could have had something good. But I do think it's a very funny paragraph. Very nice then article about the technical aspects inside of the GX. I think that's a nice article, that. They should have done their research a bit better though, because for an Amstrad magazine they still don't know what the secondary chip is, if you can see that in the cart. The smaller chip is a mystery. It is custom made by, well, it's called the acid chip, for those who know. It's is a security measure. But yeah, nice that. It's a nice little article there. Very informative. And this is interesting, because then we go completely console mad. And this, as you can see, talks about the other consoles on the market and the consoles to come. And when you read through this article, you kind of get the feeling that Amstrad were not expecting the console market to dominate games as they would do from that point onwards. We were still really in the home computer market at that point. 16 bits with the Atari ST and the Amiga, and of course with the Spectrum and the Commodore 64 all still around. But the shift to, as we all know, the shift to consoles in the 16-bit era is when it really moved, should I say, gaming as a console thing. Until PCs obviously caught up, and now we currently have obviously the PC, the high-end PC stuff, which is outstanding for gaming. But they give a nice little rundown here of the consoles that are out at the moment, their prices, and their opinion on them. Things like the original NES, £100. Aging 8-bit machine with a funny display system, limited palette and teeny sprites. But it does have Super Mario games and the full backend of the largest video game company on the planet. Yes, it does, and that's why Nintendo are still with us with successful machines. Yeah, they are. Then it talks about the Atari XC series, Atari 2600, obviously kind of gone at that point. More importantly, the Sega Master System, the Mega Drive, and upcoming ones that weren't actually released. A funny paragraph here about the Commodore 64 GS, which I'll show you that in a minute. But this is what they say about the Mega Drive. They just did not know that the Mega Drive would be as massive a success as it would be. They do open it very positively. The console to watch. Sega's 16-bit console is going on sale. It's just about to go on sale in the UK. There you go, Amstrad. There's the warning sign there. There's the warning shot. Just about to go on sale. 16-bit console. Note that for future reference. A bunch of dedicated chips make this a real mean mother. Fucker. No, it doesn't say that. Tinny sound though, and the first batch of games have been a disappointment. But just you wait. Kind of having a little dig at the sound there, which is a bit hypocritical considering the GX still does use the same sound chip that it did in the CPC. It then says about the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, obviously that wasn't released at this point. It separates for some reason the PC Engine and the Super Graphics. Neo Geo ridiculously priced, so it's not even in the same market. Commodore 64 GS. This is why they thought the GX 4000 would probably be quite successful, because they thought if Commodore doing the same thing and they're massively successful with the C64, surely the Amstrad could do the same thing. And this is what they thought about the GS. To be launched in September, around £99, basically a keyboardless C64. True. Clever cartridge design means it's easy to convert existing games to run on the console, and the cartridges are directly compatible with the C64 itself. Could do well. No, it didn't. It didn't. The problem with that, by saying it convert existing games to console, yes, but they need a keyboard to work. At least the GX 4000 games didn't suffer from that. And then they talk about obviously the GX 4000 and well, it says at the bottom here, this is interesting what it says at the bottom here. Now, technically it's correct. Blah 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 blah. That leaves the Sega Master System and the Nintendo NES claiming the bulk of the UK cheap console market. The Amstrad console is better than both, will offer more games, and has the huge Amstrad name behind it. Right, let's take that last sentence apart, shall we? The Amstrad console is better than both. Technically, yes, you are correct. Now, second part, will offer more games. No. No. Will is a word. No. No. And a no. No. That's all I can say to that. and has the huge Amstrad name behind it. Yeah, okay, right. Amstrad was big and popular in Europe and in the UK, so if they're coming from that angle, then fine. Across the pond in Japan, no, Sega and Nintendo were huge in both the States and Japan, so again, not really on board with that. They do like to be very, very optimistic in this magazine. You could have won yourself a GX4000 there. It kind of makes me more depressed reading it in a way. But this is the interesting bit, because I've always talked about the positives about the machine and why it's failed, and a lot of people know it's common knowledge about why it failed. And this here, Paris in the Spring, this article is with Sugar himself. Lovely T-shirt there, Alan. Look at that. Peas in a pod. Apart from the fact that he's wearing a very dodgy perm, looks like a very dodgy perm. And here they do question him about the nature of the 16-bit. Is it upgraded enough? Is there going to be a game library for it? Blah 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 blah. And I'm not going to dissect it completely, but there's a thing here about it says not enough bits. Market aside, though, many people will be wondering why Amstrad went for an 8-bit console rather than the 16-bit console. After all, the trend is towards more complex and ambitious graphics and a higher powered processors. Alan Sugar had an answer for this. Yes, he did. He says a lot of consideration went into the new range. Maybe. And backwards compatibility, a very important factor. Okay, so he's basically talking about the existing CPC games that are in disc and tape form being playable on the Plus machines, clearly. But surely if you were going to do a console, whether they're on disc or tape is entirely irrelevant. It doesn't need to be backward compatible. There's nothing to be backward compatible with. So the Plus system, I mean the Plus range, maybe they could have had a switching system inside the Plus systems where you could switch them into like old CPC mode, for instance, and have a more advanced 16-bit processor go. Obviously this would have pushed the cost up, and this is another thing that Sugar talks about. By keeping the costs low, he still wanted it to be budget, and I get that. I really do get that, because that's what got the success of the CPC off in the first place, especially the 464. But it seems a weak argument then, and now, well, we know what damage it did by not doing that. Oh, poor old Sugar. And again, this part here, playing the market, again talks with the marketing director, Malcolm Miller of Amstrad. He's responsible for a lot of this shit. I hold this man directly responsible for the failure of the GX4000, along with the publishing houses, but we'll talk about them in a minute. And he basically talks about when Amstrad entered the computer market with the 464, and his quote is, why change a winning formula? Because things move on. This was 84 when this 464 came out, which is 1990 now. There are consoles on the market, there are new systems in development. They had to know this. They knew about the Mega Drive, they knew about the popularity, the mass market of games that are available on the NES. They knew this, and I think they stuck by their guns too much to a business model that just wasn't going to cut it in the new decade. Again, another reason why it just didn't take off. They pride themselves on taking it on the sub 100 games consoles comparative to Sega and Nintendo. And then there's this odd comparison here about the higher price range of the home computers, saying that would be the 6128 Plus. But that doesn't make any sense, because the 6128 Plus is still an 8-bit machine, and it's going against the Amiga and the ST, which is 16-bit. If they're at the same price, even as a massive Amstrad fan, I'm going to buy an Amiga on an ST. Odd, that. But anyway, getting back to the GX. Yes, that's it. Software support. This is interesting. They're boasting about what software houses they've already got on board. Ocean, Titus, Lucio and Domark, as well as others. Yeah, the 4 of them that actually did release games on cartridge format. Speaking of which, actually talking about the publishers, there's a quote up here by the Ocean boss at the time, David Ward, who was at the launch of the games console. In the 1980s, this is his quote, in the 1980s Amstrad set the standards in games machines. The new Plus range will do the same for the 90s. Sorry Mr. Ward, you were wrong. It's a shame you were wrong, but you were. Talk about the looks of the GX4000, not a problem. I think the looks of it are great. I don't talk about the build quality, oddly enough. And upgrading from the old CPC there to the CPC Plus. So finally, we'll talk about this bit here, because it's interesting. Yeah, there's an interesting thing about. Oh, hang on a minute. Oh right, yeah, right. Sorry, I had to cut that. Right, this to refresh my memory. This here says the shape of things to come. So this is basically giving the games that are they know about and are coming up. And obviously, Batman the movie, yes. RoboCop 2, yes. Yeah, we'll get that in a minute. Now, RoboCop 2 is a fantastic game on the GX. We know that. Batman, good game, but just a CPC clone. They don't talk about that in this. They never mention about the CPC dump clones. Never talk about the shovelware aspect of what happened. Like with Klax, again. Shadow Warriors never came out on the GX4000. Would have been great if it did. Operation Thunderbolt, obviously complete shovelware, poo. And Chase HQ. Even if, I tell you what, even if Chase HQ was shoveled onto the GX4000, I still would have been happy, because the bloody CPC version is bloody awesome. GX4000 could have added a little bit more music, some of this to the backgrounds. Could have been a direct port if you want me, but I still would have loved it to be on it. And of course, Fire and Forget 2. They've shown this because of the demonstration of the gradient improvement graphics that the GX4000 can do over the CPC, which is true. The graphics custom in the GX is, superior to the CPC. Crazy Cars 2 and Escape from the Planet of Robot Monsters, again never materialised on the GX. So reading through this is very interesting. There's a quick, I'll just show you this, a quick review on Burning Rubber. And of course this is the first GX4000 game, Console Plus range game that they reviewed, so they've given a 100% for the graphics. Well, it had to be, didn't it? Quite a high staying power, I suppose, longevity, 96%, 71% grab factor, so that's gameplay, 60% sonics. Don't agree with that. I think it's actually got better sound than that. I think it's got lower gameplay. They do kind of say it's a bit sluggish on the controls. Of course, as we know, it looks great, sounds pretty good, but it is a bit sluggish to control. But it's actually quite a fair review considering. But what I will do, I'll leave you with this, and this is basically the nail in the coffin for the GX4000, because Amstrad Action was supposed to be sort of promoting it, and they did. I suppose they did their best. They did support it for quite a while, even after it was discontinued. But a paragraph here, I'll highlight it for you. License to print money. They don't mention the fact that these cartridge games are £15 more expensive than, say, a disc tape game, and that'd be a full price game. But it does say this. One of the key points that will, I tell you what, before I say this, the idea that Amstrad had about this is actually quite clever. And if the developing houses had grasped it by the balls, it really could have taken off. So the idea was good on paper, but I think because Amstrad was so strict on their budget and not prepared to sort of take on Nintendo or Sega head on I think this is where that's where it fell down. But I'll leave it with you and see what you think. One of the key points that will ensure masses of games on the cartridge format is the Amstrad licensing agreement, which allows any software publisher to write for the new machines. Whereas other console manufacturers such as Nintendo and Sega strictly dictate who writes for their machine, that is true, well, especially in Nintendo's case, Amstrad will be leaving the programming to the professionals. The Amsoft label, which launched 1,000 rolling games, well, 8 I think, no, not 8, 6, will not be making an appearance, so Amstrad will not make games themselves. I think they should have actually. Amstrad has the sole manufacturing rights to the cartridges. It also insists that producers comply with certain packaging formats, so that's the really lovely box and the labelling and the artwork and stuff. But apart from that, any software house will be able to produce software for the machines. Now, considering that free license like that, that sounds like a really good idea for the publishing houses. They should have really, you know, it's surprising they didn't jump on that. Development costs for the cartridges, yes, were quite high, I believe. I think the overheads to develop the cartridge games for the developer were more costly, say, for developing it for Sega and Nintendo. But that's actually quite clever, and it's a shame it didn't work. It really is a shame it didn't work. It's just an eye-opener to read that, and this is what they thought. That's where they thought gaming was going, where they thought console gaming was going. They didn't realise it was going to take off in this massive way. It seems that Amstrad were half-hearted in this. They kind of sort of dip their toes in, but they're going to put a few quid in, but not stake their claim on it, not put the balls on the line. Maybe that's how companies survive, but you know, I think they lost quite a bit of money on the Plus range and the GX dying, and then eventually that killed the Amstrad computer market altogether. But it's some of the claims in there, the masses of cartridge games, yes, 26. I laugh now. I'm laughing through bated tears. I am. But there's some good articles in there, and it's just very interesting to read. You know, give yourself a giggle as well. But it's got a great cover, you've got to admit. It's still a great looking machine. So I thought I'd give you a quick talk about that quite legendary issue of Amstrad Action. So there we go. Ooh, some good stuff. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, please let me know, because I would like to make this into a series to go through issues of Amstrad Action, talking about the features, the cover stories, and major sort of breakthrough games and hardware advances of the time in the Amstrad thing. And sometimes they're comments on other systems. They like to dip in a sarky comment here and there. No, they just talk about the, sorry, missed that bit there. Talk about the instant loading thing being a thing. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you did like this video, let me know, and I will continue the series. If not, then this has clearly been a one-off video about me again banging on about the GX4000, but this time in a more, should I say, light manner, light-hearted, jovial manner. But anyway, I'm off to play a GX4000 game now, so I'll see you later. Novabug out.